right, we are live. Sorry it's loud. I'll wake you up here. 5 o'clock. My name's Sean O'Dell. I am a member of the VMware Cloud Services team at VMware. I've been with VMware a little over 8 years, actually in 2 different stints. I was a part of the cloud management business unit for about 4.5 years. I left VMware and I went to a company called Arkin that 14 months later VMware acquired, which we now call Network Insight. So did that for 10 months after the acquisition, and then early 2017 I joined VMware Cloud Services as a cloud architect, and really the beginning stages of VMware's transition to moving towards public cloud, cloud native, Kubernetes, containers, etc. And just to be clear, I am talking about VMware Cloud on AWS as one of the pieces of the puzzle, but that is not my specialty or area of focus. I really spend all of my days in public clouds, so hopefully you'll appreciate this. Our session today is Migrate to the Cloud, because that is the number one question that I know everybody gets. How do I migrate to the cloud? There's no right answer. There's no one answer, because there are 100 different ways to do this. Customers ask all the time, I need guidance on how to migrate to the cloud. Okay, I can't do it prescriptively. We can give you guidelines and guardrails and definitions and different ways to do it, but there is no one perfect way of how to take your applications from on-premises to the public cloud. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as we go through it. So here's a little bit of the what I call kind of the fun part of this conversation. Is it's really about application velocity. How can I become a competitive advantage, if you want to use that term, over maybe a competitor, or how can I disrupt and improve the overall utilization of my organization's compute and infrastructure and application services. But the reality is it's really you as an organization having software components, customizing it maybe yourself, right? Not buying all shrink wrap applications. But the key is we want to innovate and disrupt. I started in this group at VMware early 2017, and I was talking about native AWS and other public clouds. Trust me, I get the innovation and disruption conversation, because I had to go into customers and say, I don't touch vSphere. Oh, and I worked for VMware. How did that go? It's awesome. Including inside of VMware. So this is some of the things that we've seen from customers as we've gone through it. It's really about agility and speed and optimizing the software development process. One of the gentlemen from Round Tower who was up here just a second ago was talking a lot about this. There is no perfect way, there is no set standard way. I actually think in this case, you as a customer, as your organization, we can provide you options, and you'll hear me actually say a lot of times choice, options, delivery of choice, and really simplifying the entire process. So here's the problem that we see with application release cycles. Infrastructure and OS configuration. Does anybody care about OS and infrastructure configuration anymore? I hope not. But it absolutely happens. We've seen it a little. I've been doing a lot of stuff in Lambda, and some of the dependencies of Lambda. OS configuration is really important, especially when you're trying to import packages. And it's some of the things that we're seeing. So obviously test to stage to prod. I've seen some organizations move to 4 stages, 5 stages, different things. But really the goal is increasing consistency and the repeatability of my processes, whether it's on premises or within the public cloud. I really don't think it should matter. It's the same delivery methodology as you go, whether it's on-prem or not. Well, what about the types of delivery? We're seeing things like infrastructure as code, whether it's HashiCorp's Terraform or some of the others in the space. VMware has a couple of solutions that are focused on infrastructure as code, most notably our VMware Cloud Automation services that we announced back at VMworld US. And then also containers and portability of containers. We VMware have a couple of options, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. But really, containers and Kubernetes changes the game significantly. PaaS platforms. Look, we're at Amazon. They have 900 different ways to do the same thing in many cases. It just depends on how you want to do it, and what is repeatable and sustainable for you as an organization. I'm a huge fan of developer freedom. I know that sounds really weird, but because developers want to do what they want to do, and they would like to do one thing today and another thing 20 minutes later. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm a huge proponent of developer freedom with enterprise governance. Let the developers do what they want to do, and then come on top of it and provide, operations, cost, visibility, security, etc. So how? But the net result, and this is really what it comes down to, we're moving to iterations and much smaller code changes, but more frequent. So who is anybody a long-term VMware customer? Over 5 years? Thank you, Peter. If you've been a long-term VMware customer, you realize we actually in the past made changes to the core code base of vSphere every 18 months. That's a long time. I went to a startup. We developed fully in SaaS and on top of native AWS. We did code changes, every day. That's how it works. It's a different world. So when we came back to VMware by acquisition, we had to meet somewhere in the middle. And they were like, no, you can't do code changes every day, even though it was SaaS, right? You have to slow down, all right? So we acknowledged 8 weeks. By the way, we've now fixed that, and we're now making changes on the fly each and every day. If I put a PR or if something goes wrong, we will make the changes automatically. That's actually one of the core functions of VMware Cloud on AWS. VMware Cloud on AWS is running vSphere, the hypervisor, ESXi, in versions that you don't even have access to on premises yet. That's the changes that VMware has made, not only in our core platforms, but even as our development organizations, holistically, as we do these things. It's really about iterations, lots of changes, and frequency. The how is the most debated question. I would argue there is no debate. There is no perfect answer. There is no right answer. But most likely, the organizations have to decide which and how much of each they want to move to. There is no, I wish I could say there's a prescriptive methodology for how you do software development versus you or us. That's just not the case. Even on our own team, we do things a little bit differently as individual contributors. We want to do things differently. So let's talk a little bit about what containers has done in this space. I think only accelerate this in a crazy fashion, if you want to use that term. Very fast. Create environments rapidly. Within 4 commands from the command line, I can actually provision a Kubernetes cluster, authenticate the Kubernetes cluster, and then be at kubectl or kubectl or kubecontrol, whichever one you want to use, I don't care. And then I can use Helm, and I can provision an application and it'll be up and running in a matter of lines of code. Just grab the repo from GitHub, call it a good day. It's light, minimal resources necessary. One of the things Tim and I's boss, he built a couple of applications for us, and the first thing I did when I grabbed his repo is I realized there was some extra stuff in his code or his repo that was just not necessary. So guess what I did? Cut it. It's not there. Why am I wasting my time? Why is it even there? Sure, maybe we needed some artifacts, but in this case it just wasn't there. So I removed them. Minimal resources necessary. The last one is portability. I focus most of my time in the multi-cloud space, so whether it's on-prem, public cloud, that means Amazon, Azure, Google. With containers, with Kubernetes, you have this portability of moving that application very quickly to wherever you decide, based upon business need, decisions, your current desires, which vendor you like the most, which lunch you got better from which vendor, I don't really care. But really it's about fast, light, and portable application development. Now, there's no right or wrong choice. You as an organization have to make up your mind at which point in time is the right way for said project. So if you move to a higher efficiency type of model, you lower complexity. But if you have higher flexibility in one path, you have lower standardization, right? It's containers, applications, it's functions, it's on-prem, it's in the public cloud. There's so many different options. And then at the bottom here we put IaaS, right? Because IaaS is still the standard, EC2 or your traditional VMware VMs or VMC, right? So there's a lot of options. So here's the challenges with any app. The first thing we see is day one or on the build process. This is what we call greenfield. From our point of view, the team can make progress in developing the core application the way they want. They're using CI/CD pipelines. They've fully ingrained themselves in the DevOps mentality. They are providing a consistent experience for setup, environmental configurations, and then last but not least, it doesn't take terribly long because we're doing a real-world working environment of my application code. It's hours, not weeks. In some cases, minutes, not hours. So it really goes into the how quick do you want it, but what do you lose in that situation? The second thing that we see in the brownfield is when migrating applications. By the way, I am a firm believer, and you can like this comment or not, I do not believe in migrating workloads from on-prem to the cloud. I just don't. If you're going to do something like a VMC, I would argue that's not a migration. That's a vMotion. Okay? Because you're taking an existing traditional, on-premises application, you're literally shifting the workload, lift and shift if you want to say that. That's just my personal opinion. You could do a refactor. You could do a replatform. You could literally, there are 6, 7, 8 different ways if you were to take different categories on how to do this. But in the brownfield space, you now have patching, and you have some of what I call the traditional models, right? CVEs from a component perspective. Back in old school day, I'm an old school SMS, SCCM guy, so been there, done that. You have scaling situations. You have, the desire to seamlessly scale an app. It obviously, it's the components, it's the, how do I accommodate for that, right? On premises, traditionally, we have larger vSphere clusters, and it's over-provisioned, maybe an N+1 and N+2 model, right? I'm literally sitting on gear that's doing nothing. To be ready for that application when it's, peak time, maybe it's Black Friday, maybe it's taxation into the year, right? There's so many different ways to look at that. Upgrades. Nobody likes upgrades. Nobody. Does anybody like upgrades? Probably not. We need to abstract the upgrade process away and really simplify that. And so, brownfield, greenfield. Then last but not least, the operational effort on a brownfield is we're accustomed to it. We've been doing it this way in a lot of cases. Should the app, is it fewer resources? Is it a lot of time and effort? Do I need to rebuild the application, right? There's a lot of different challenges that we talk about there. So here's a fun slide. This is actually not my slide. It's one of the VMware slides, but lift and shift and replatforming. You can. It's just enough modernization. I wouldn't call it modernization. Why? Because you're bringing legacy debt, code debt, operational debt, whatever debt you want to bring along, right? There's a lot of skeletons in the closet, per se. You may not have access to the code, right? It could be that old. When I was on the customer side, we did an application modernization program, and at the time we had 1,400 applications. And we found about 20% of them, the original code creators or the developers were no longer with the organization, and there was maybe somebody who knew the application, right? So you just got to be careful when you're in this case. You're going to revisit decisions made during the greenfield time. I call that the legacy debt. And then last but not least, you want to get some quick wins. Hey, how can I migrate something easily? Is it simple to move it? Is there a kernel vulnerability, right? We talk about customers. I still know of customers running Windows NT4. That's what you call legacy. It's legacy debt. And then we have the modernization side. This is pretty much where I spend most of my day. But we leverage features in modern consumption patterns. By the way, has Google or Amazon or Azure or really anybody created something, a new service and a new feature, and then it ultimately said, we don't want to, we don't want to have it anymore? My favorite one is Amazon. There's like 18 different ways to do containerization. You could do Fargate, you can do Lambda. Oh, now you have Firecracker, which is, okay. Whatever. There's like a lot of ways to do these things. So you give up some of your freedom in a lot of cases, right? Blue-green deployments, auto-healing, auto-scaling, which is fantastic technology. There's just some drawbacks potentially. Tim's an old networking guy, so we get into the fun pieces of routing and networking and firewalling when you get into these modern applications. So we did at VMworld Europe just this past, month ago now. We had one of our demonstrations for our NSX Cloud solution, and they initially went in and they were going to show this demo in the keynote, and they were going to basically say that because of VMware NSX, you could not access some of the new features within the IBM Watson, family and within the cloud space at IBM. And I was like, do we really want our product to be like the reason why I can't talk to this new piece and feature from Watson? And finally they were like, yeah, that's not the greatest thing ever, right? So we have to be able to accommodate all of the changes. It's a mindset. And then last but not least, we look at some of the things like you probably have access to the code, or maybe it's your code or forked code, right? There's a difference in the model, whether it's replatforming, refactoring, lift and shift, modernization, etc. So which choice is best for which application? I don't know. But you have options, right? It does come down to context, business need, right? All those good things that we really don't care about. So what is VMware doing in this space to help you migrate to the cloud? There's a couple of options, really depending on how you want to do it. Freedom and choice is what we talk about. The first thing is we do have VMware Cloud on AWS, right? VMware Cloud on AWS builds on the VMware core platform, right? We've been in this business a long time. 86% of the hypervisor market, if you want to use that term. But we're using our core compute, storage, and networking components. That's vSphere, ESXi, vSAN on the storage side, and then NSX on the networking side. We've taken those core fundamental solutions that VMware provides and partnered obviously with Amazon, and we build a VMware data center sitting inside of Amazon. It's actually pretty nice, and you can literally vMotion workloads over. And the key is with a VMC type of space, many organizations already have core competencies. They've had folks who've men and women who've been using vSphere for a long time. They have solutions and tools and all of those things. So VMC actually helps in a lot of those cases, right? It's a new way of doing traditional VMware if you want to use that, right? And I think I don't have to get up here and tell you what we've done and what Amazon and VMware have done together in this space. I think it's pretty evident as we continue to grow our partnership, and really the customers that you see using VMC, right? So here's some of the ways that we're seeing customers use VMC: on-demand capacity, right? I don't want to spin up extra hosts. I don't want to have extra clusters. Cloud migration. We actually get this pretty often. I'm getting out of the data center business, right? But I want to continue to utilize, or maybe I don't want to refactor every application. Maybe I don't want to rebuild and use a bunch of functions in serverless, right? So cloud migration, it's pretty simple. This is actually one of the most common use cases that we're seeing today. And then last but not least is next-gen applications. So within the VMware space, there's kind of this competing priority, right? We have what got us here, this on-premises data center, in this new cloud space, or cloud native space if you want, a public cloud space. So we have two approaches. We have an approach where it takes your on-premises, what you've been doing, and extends it to the public cloud, right? We'll talk about what we call PKS in just a little bit. And on the flip side, we want to make sure, this is where my team is focused, is we want to make sure that every workload, whether they are a traditional VMware workload or a net new Lambda function that I created this morning during my other code session, they are treated equally, and we provide visibility and operations and cost management as well as security on really both points of view, right? So we're wanting to ensure that however you do this, we give you choice and options, right? I wish I could get up here and say you all need to use X. It's just not going to happen. I don't think anybody's going to say that, right? If they are, they're crazy. So what happens if what is VMware's desired goal, right, with VMC? If you want to migrate, if you want to get out of the data center business and use your vSphere assets, right? Use the resources, use the information that you've had traditionally. What happens in this case where I'm all public cloud, or I've started in the public cloud? We've seen stories in the news where somebody was an all-in AWS customer, and now they have a data center. Oh, but they're still an AWS customer, right? So multi-cloud is one of the key functions and components that I focus on day in and day out. And you might have noticed VMware's made some announcements over the past few months. We made an acquisition really about a year and a half ago, something called Wavefront, that is a huge component of our strategy. It's really focused on multi-cloud operations and metrics visibility and gathering as much data as possible without actually losing time series metrics data for over time, and it's basically a streaming data service. Then we made the announcement and the acquisition of Cloud Health, which is the multi-cloud, cloud management platform of choice in the industry. They manage over $5 billion in assets of Amazon spend every month. And then we also made an announcement of what we call VMware Secure State, which is focused on looking at things like connected threats from a security perspective. And then last but not least, we announced our cloud automation services. And when we look at this, there is a goal and a desire within VMware. Notice there's no vSphere down here. All of these solutions that we're actually talking about, specifically Secure State, when it launches in a couple of weeks, it will only support Amazon and it will only support Azure. It won't even support vSphere, right? Cloud Health. Cloud Health has a data center component today, but it's primarily built for the public cloud. And Wavefront doesn't need vSphere. It's a full, it's a SaaS service, right? So you're probably like, even today, I get customers like, really? VMware is doing SaaS, has nothing to do with vSphere. Yep, we do. And so we're going to continue to do this. This is actually a huge component. My favorite comment from Pat Gelsinger on stage at VMworld in US, back here in Vegas, back in August, he said, I'm going to use Michael Dell's credit card to spin up 100,000 workloads in AWS. Think about that. And we firmly believe in that approach because our customers are the ones who are doing it. So, looking at operations from a public cloud perspective. Now we can shift focus and talk a little about PKS and Kubernetes real quick. So I mentioned we have this method of using, vSphere solutions, what has gotten us here. And in this case, PKS is actually the Pivotal Container Service, or PKS, that runs on premises. It's utilizing the VMware vSphere components that everybody knows and trusts, and it's using VMware core components plus a little bit of Bosch from Pivotal, and we are doing a fully, what you call a managed Kubernetes instance or service on premises, right? It's actually pretty fantastic. If you're using NSX, it uses NSX, right? It simplifies with Bosch from a management plane perspective, and this is definitely one of the things that we see a lot of customers utilizing. On the flip side, though, what if I don't have vSphere? That's where we have something called Cloud PKS. Cloud PKS is, it was actually formerly known as VKE, or VMware Kubernetes Engine. It's actually a Kubernetes engine that today runs on top of Amazon, natively in Amazon. We're doing a lot of things around smart clusters and using EC2 and some other things to do this. But we're actually providing Kubernetes as a fully managed service. No vSphere required. No on-premises data center. And I actually think Tim and I, we've been on this service for a while now, even during beta. And in this case, we want to provide customers an option, right? The key with Cloud PKS is not only do we have all of this running inside of a native, Amazon, so you can use Amazon services, but it supports the Kubernetes ecosystem. You might have heard we made an announcement a few weeks back for an intent to acquire Heptio. Right? So VMware has made two significant investments, one in Cloud Health, one in Heptio for both the public cloud or native public cloud, as well as the cloud native and Kubernetes space. We're going to continue to do this. Our team is definitely right in the middle of these acquisitions and conversations of where do we develop and how do we take these strategies, right? So we want to give options. It's choice. When I took over this session, I was basically said, okay, migrate to the cloud. No, there's no perfect answer. There's no end-all, be-all, right? I can give you some guidance. I've seen what customers are doing, but there is nothing perfect. So here's the key. VMware started this journey back in 2017. Luckily, I had the opportunity to be a part of it, and we built VMware Cloud Services, right? It is a set of SaaS services. It's very simple and easy to use. It's so easy. Yes, just go to cloud.vmware.com. You see all of our available services. A good example, right? Cloud PKS. You can actually request access to Cloud PKS. Today, actually right now we offer a $150 trial. You can begin using it, and literally in 10 minutes you can have a cluster up and running, as well as an application with Kubernetes. If you want to use Helm, you can do that. A couple of our peers had sessions on that specifically. The key is we're bringing opportunity for our customers who are full in on Amazon or full in on multi-cloud. And so at the end of the day, VMware is going to tell you when it comes to migrating to the cloud, we have options for you. Do I have the perfect option for every situation? Probably not. But at the end of the day, we have options. And it's choice and it's freedom. And we want to make sure that your journey as you move to the cloud, as you move to cloud native, you have options. and you have choice. And I think from my perspective, obviously I'm on the team and I believe in it, but it's been a lot of fun to talk with customers over the past couple years, and I'm really excited what we're doing as we move into the future, into 2019 and beyond. So with that, that's all I have for today. Are there any questions before we close out? Anybody? 3, 2, 1. All right. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. I know it's after 5, and nobody wants to be working right now because we're in Las Vegas. So have a good week, and thank you for stopping by.